icing on the cake.
America recognizes that. How do you plan to welcome the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister comes? What's your plans?
We want to welcome him not only as India's leader, as a world leader. India and America is not only solving the problem of India and America, we are solving the whole world. When the vaccination drive happened, India not only solved India's problem, it supplied the vaccination to the whole globe. Also with Make in India, Make for India and other thing in India's story, our diaspora's contribution is immense, needed, and that's the best way to give back to our motherland where we are from. And we are really proud of Modi ji to create this kind of very high energy, and we wish him all the best, and we wish him good health.
High energy. Last comment, sir, if you can come here. In a very brief way, how do you see the visit of the Indian Prime Minister cementing the relationship between the two countries? If you can come here and speak to our viewers as well.
Yeah. As Prime Minister Modi yesterday mentioned that now we are the highest stage of the India-American relationship, and that's going to go further up, and with of course all the support of Indian diaspora within the US, and of course under Modi's leadership, we are going to see that America and India are going to be great partners leading the world towards the peace.
I saw a lot of chants as well. Are you planning to welcome the Indian Prime Minister in such a way? And if you can do similar things right now for our viewers.
Of course, we say Modi, Modi. Let us chant
Modi, 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 Modi.
So this is how the diaspora plans to welcome the Indian Prime Minister here when he arrives. We know that all throughout the visit we have seen a celebration of sorts for diaspora, whether it's the South Lawns of the White House where WION was present, whether it's the Capitol Hill US Congress where WION was present, and now again here at the Ronald Reagan Center where the Prime Minister will be shortly arriving.
Right, Siddhant, we can see there's a lot of excitement out there for the Indian Prime Minister's arrival. Thanks very much. I would now come to you, Molly. You're joining us live from the Kennedy Center. It has indeed been a power-packed schedule for the Indian Prime Minister, and a historic one too. What does this visit by the Indian Prime Minister mean for the changing world order?
Well, look at the time at which this visit is coming, Rahisha. It comes at a time when equations between India and the United States are seen as one of the game changers as far as the mission to counter China is concerned, and which is why we have both the US and India collaborating in fields such as defense, industrial cooperation, also tech ties getting a huge boost as far as this visit is concerned. That those two have been the key focus areas, apart from people-to-people ties, collaboration in space, climate change, so on and so forth. But largely speaking, the potential that the two countries have to collaborate in these areas, according to experts we've been speaking to as well, is tremendous, and which is why the US President has called the relationship between India and the US among the most consequential. The Indian Prime Minister talking about how the partnership is limitless, the scope knows no bounds, and
right, Molly,
the two leaders have also spoken about how economic ties.
Right, Molly, I'll have to interrupt you right in here. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is currently addressing the forum. Let's just take a listen.
To the members of the Indian American diaspora, and we've noticed that you're here this week. To all the friends of the U.S.-India cooperation here with us, thank you. Thank you for your work to bring our countries and our citizens ever closer together. You are, as Prime Minister Modi put it, the real engine powering our relationship. Over the last several decades, we have seen a transformation in U.S.-India ties, driven by private sector and civil society leaders like you, by governments of different parties in both of our countries. Today, guided by the vision of President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, the U.S.-India partnership is closer, it's broader, it is more dynamic than it has ever been. And as President Biden said yesterday, we are two great nations, two great friends, two great powers that can define the course of the 21st century. The many deals, the agreements, the exchanges that are coming out of this state visit illustrate just how comprehensive our partnership has become. It reaches quite literally from the seas to the stars, from promoting public health to bolstering peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific. And at its heart is our economic engagement between entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, and others that is expanding opportunity for both of our countries and beyond. Together, we are facilitating greater trade and investment, building on what is already a record $191 billion in bilateral trade. We see the mutual benefits of this relationship when Air India purchases 200 Boeing aircraft, supporting over 1 million American jobs in 44 states. And we see it when Boeing, in turn, commits to training Indian pilots and building regional hubs in India. This partnership is also defined increasingly by efforts to advance technology and innovation, 5G, quantum, artificial intelligence, and to ensure that they are shaped by our values. Building on the initiative on critical and emerging technologies that was launched in January, we announced an innovation handshake yesterday to further connect our startup ecosystems. And the landmark agreement to jointly manufacture advanced GE fighter jet engines in India will facilitate greater tech transfer while strengthening our shared security. We're also de-risking and diversifying our supply chains, from Micron investing $800 million to assemble semiconductors in Gujarat, to India joining the Mineral Security Partnership. And that partnership is helping to develop and ensure trusted sources for vital energy minerals. India's Epsilon Carbon is investing $650 million and creating more than 500 good-paying jobs to build electric vehicle batteries here in the United States, the largest ever Indian investment in the U.S. EV battery industry. And of course, we're investing in our people. Our country's education systems have collectively trained the leaders of trailblazing companies in both the United States and India, Infosys, IBM, FedEx, and we're committed to continuing to create new success stories. Streamlining visa processes, opening new consulates to facilitate travel, expanding student exchanges, research collaborations, addressing skills gaps, promoting economic empowerment of women, ensuring that all our people have access to opportunity. You know, if we were gathered together 50, 75, 100 years ago, and we were asking ourselves the question, what constitutes the wealth of a nation? Probably the answer you get back then is maybe the size of its landmass, its population, the strength of its military, its abundance of raw materials. And all of those things remain important. But I think what the United States and India recognize powerfully together is that in this 21st century, the true wealth of our nation is our people. And our ability to maximize their potential is what sets us apart. President Biden often likes to say that America can be defined by a single word: possibilities. These past few days have underscored how that spirit of possibility, defines now the U.S.-India relationship. Our governments will continue to do our part. But I'm asking all of you in this room to continue to do yours. Forge new ventures and partnerships. Invent game-changing products and services. Create unimagined opportunities. Visit friends and family in India. Host them here in the United States. Maybe even right here at the Kennedy Center. Continue to be that engine powering our progress. If we do all that, I truly believe that the U.S. and India will shape together a more peaceful, a more prosperous, a more connected future. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome USISPF Chairman, Chairman Emeritus of Cisco Systems, and CEO of JC2 Ventures, Mr. John Chambers.
Thank you, my friends. It is one of the biggest honors of my life today to introduce a leader that I think grasps where the future is and is able to enable a country, partner with other countries, and change the world. I have met probably 40 of the top leaders around the world over 35 years in leadership. And the very first time I met the Prime Minister, he was different. He had an energy that was amazing. He had an understanding of technology and how technology was going to enable a country. And then he did something that is really unusual. He connected a vision to a strategy, to what are the priorities to get it done, to outcomes. And when he outlined his Digital India strategy to me and asked for feedback, it was perfect for the future. He based his economy, inclusion of all the people in India, 1.4 billion today, on the ability to bring the power of technology to them, to change their lives, to enable them to participate in what will be the largest economic growth of any country over the next decade. I want to be very upfront. As most of you know, I have been the biggest optimist, the biggest bull on India's future, not in 1 or 2 years, but for the last decade since he came into the leadership. I am the Prime Minister's biggest supporter, and I always have been. Honored to be his friend, but also watch a man who has the ability to outline a strategy and then make it happen. People often ask, what was so unique? What is so unique about this person that changes countries, and I believe will change the world over time? He has an ability to inspire hope, to make us believe on what's possible. He then has the ability to build confidence on what the future can be. Then he is amazingly good on execution and getting his team and other teams to pour toward a common goal. And then most important, he gets results. Many in America have a very positive view of India and the Prime Minister, but they really don't understand how far this country's come in the last decade. The country has moved from a very slow follower, where the government was very bureaucratic and very, very slow moving and rigid and not a dreamer, to the most innovative country in the world. It shows up in the economic results, where the country has moved from number 10 in the world to number 5, and as the Prime Minister said, in the next couple of years, number 3. However, I'm usually pretty good at getting market transitions and being accurate on connecting the dots for the future. India will become the number 1 economy in the world. And it will do so under the plans and programs the Prime Minister is putting in place. When you look at really leadership, leadership is made up of 3 component parts, in my opinion. It's your currency. It's first about your track record. And the track record of the Prime Minister in India over the last decade is an envy of the entire world, an example and a model for us to follow. Secondly, it's the ability to form relationships. This leader can form relationships with leaders around the world, with Democrats and Republicans. A little bit of Southern humor there. But also, he instills trust. And often when people come together and say, here's what we can do together in the future, it is all about trust. Do you trust me? Do you trust the other side that both of us will deliver? When people ask me that question, I have one simple answer. I would trust this leader with my life. So today you're going to hear one of the great visionaries of the future who also knows how to execute. You're going to hear he'll be very humble. He's a very kind person. But you also hear a vision for what I believe will make India the number 1 economy. You're going to hear a vision of how two countries can partner together in a way that no two countries ever have in history to work toward a common goal that will be to the benefit of every one of our citizens in India and in the United States, but also the benefit to the world. It is my pleasure to introduce one of the great leaders in the world, Prime Minister Modi. Please come and address us, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. मेरे मित्र गवर्नर ऑफ डेलावेयर, distinguished congressmen, other elected representatives, my old friend John Chambers, my always great companion, I can say, Mukesh Agiji, industry campaign, ladies and gentlemen, namaskar, गुड इवनिंग। अपनी अमेरिका विजिट के दौरान इस कार्यक्रम का मैं बहुत बेसब्री से इंतजार कर रहा था। आप सभी अमेरिका की विकास यात्रा के मजबूत स्तंभ है, मजबूत पिलर्स हैं, और इसलिए मैं आपसे मिलना भी चाहता था, आपसे बातें भी करना चाहता था। कांग्रेसमैन हो, बिजनेस लीडर्स हो, डॉक्टर्स हो, इंजीनियर्स हो, साइंटिस्ट हो, दूसरे प्रोफेशनल्स हो, आप सभी अपनी मेहनत से अमेरिका को इस ऊंचाई पर लाए हैं। आप सभी अमेरिकन ड्रीम का हिस्सा है। आपने अमेरिकन ड्रीम को जिया है। आपने दिखाया है कि संकल्प लेकर उसे सिद्धि कैसे पहुंचाया जाता है। मैं आप सभी का अभिनंदन करता हूं इस कार्यक्रम में मुझे निमंत्रित करने के लिए। मैं आगे जी का, जॉन का, आप सबका हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। फ्रेंड्स, मुझे अमेरिका आए 4 दिन हो गए हैं। इन 4 दिनों में मैं प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन समेत बहुत से लोगों से मिला हूं। मेरी कितने ही सीईओज के साथ, यहां के दिग्गजों के साथ मुलाकात हुई है। जिस एक बात ने मुझे सबसे ज्यादा आत्मविश्वास दिया वो है भारत और अमेरिका की पार्टनरशिप। और मैं बहुत विश्वास से कह रहा हूं, दावे से कह रहा हूं, ये पार्टनरशिप सिर्फ कन्वीनियंस की पार्टनरशिप नहीं है, ये पार्टनरशिप है कन्विक्शन की। ये पार्टनरशिप है कंपैशन की, और ये पार्टनरशिप है एक बेहतर विश्व के लिए शेयर्ड कमिटमेंट की। और इस पार्टनरशिप की बुनियाद, इसकी नींव आप है। अमेरिका के और भारत के नागरिक है। इस पार्टनरशिप की एक और खास बात है, अक्रॉस द पार्टी लाइन अमेरिका में भारत के लिए जबरदस्त समर्थन है। कल अमेरिकी कांग्रेस में जिस तरह बाय पार्टीजन सपोर्ट भारत को मिला है, वो वाकई अभूतपूर्व है। इसलिए मेरा ये विश्वास और गहरा हो गया है कि हमारी पार्टनरशिप 21वीं सदी की दुनिया का भाग्य बदल सकती है। फ्रेंड्स, हर देश की विकास यात्रा में एक ऐसा टाइम पीरियड आता है जब वो एक नई ऊर्जा के साथ एक नया लक्ष्य तय करता है। आज भारत भी एक ऐसे ही टाइम पीरियड से गुजर रहा है। कुछ समय पहले ही हमने अपनी आजादी के 75 साल पूरे किए हैं और हमने संकल्प लिया है, मोदी ने नहीं, 140 करोड़ हिंदुस्तानियों ने संकल्प लिया है। और ये संकल्प है विकसित भारत का, डेवलप इंडिया का। हम भारत में दशकों से चली आ रही समस्याओं का स्थायी समाधान कर रहे हैं और हम चुनौती को भी चुनौती देते हैं। हम भारत के गरीबों को सशक्त कर रहे हैं, उनके ईज ऑफ लिविंग बढ़ा रहे हैं। 10 साल में भारत, जैसा अभी जॉन ने कहा, दुनिया की 10वें नंबर की इकोनॉमी से 5वें नंबर की इकोनॉमी बन गया है। कोरोना काल में जिस तरह भारत ने इस महामारी का मुकाबला किया, वो भारत के सामर्थ्य को दिखाता है। आप जानते हैं कि आज पोस्ट पैंडेमिक वर्ल्ड में इकोनॉमी, इन्फ्लेशन और सप्लाई चेन क्या हालत है। इन सब के बीच भारत आज 7% से अधिक से भी ग्रोथ लेकर आगे बढ़ रहा है। और ये ऐसे ही नहीं हुआ है दोस्तों। आज भारत में रिफॉर्म्स का एक अभूतपूर्व दौर चल रहा है। इकोनॉमिक वर्ल्ड के आप लोग जानते हैं कि हाई ग्रोथ, लो इन्फ्लेशन का कॉम्बिनेशन आसान नहीं है, लेकिन आज भारत ये भी करके दिखा रहा है। हम फिस्कल डेफिसिट को नियंत्रित रखते हुए कैपेक्स में लगातार वृद्धि कर रहे हैं। हमारा एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ रहा है, फॉरेक्स बढ़ रहा है और एफडीआई का नया रिकॉर्ड बनता चला जा रहा है। पिछले 2-2.5 साल में ही अमेरिकी कंपनियों ने $16 बिलियन से ज्यादा भारत में निवेश किए हैं। फ्रेंड्स, भारत की सफलता का आधार, भारत के विकास की सबसे बड़ी ड्राइविंग फोर्स भारत के लोगों का एस्पिरेशन है। ये अमेरिकन ड्रीम से बहुत अलग नहीं है। आज भारत की जीडीपी में प्राइवेट कंजम्पशन का शेयर 1.5 दशक में सबसे अधिक हो गया है। और जिस बात को लेकर हम सबको समाधान होगा वो है भारत में एक्सट्रीम पॉवर्टी तेजी से खत्म होती चली जा रही है। भारत में न्यू मिडिल क्लास एक ऐसा ब्लॉक है जिसका लगातार विस्तार हो रहा है। भारत के लोगों की यही एस्पिरेशन भारत और अमेरिका की पार्टनरशिप की सबसे अहम दूरी बनने जा रहा है। इस बहुत बड़े वर्ग की आकांक्षा पूरी करने के लिए भारत जो कर रहा है उसने अमेरिका के लिए भी नई संभावनाओं के द्वार खोल दिए हैं। अब जैसे भारत में एविएशन सेक्टर में डिमांड लगातार बढ़ रही है, भारत का डोमेस्टिक एयर ट्रैफिक, हमारा पैसेंजर्स ग्रोथ नया रिकॉर्ड बना रही है। इस डिमांड की पूर्ति के लिए भारत की एयरलाइंस कंपनियां सैकड़ों एयरक्राफ्ट का ऑर्डर दे रही है और इसका लाभ, जैसे सेक्रेटरी ब्लिंकन ने भी कहा, इसका लाभ यहां अमेरिका की कंपनियों को हो रहा है। यहां भी जॉब्स क्रिएट हो रही है। साथियों, डिफेंस सेक्टर में भारत और अमेरिका की पार्टनरशिप को मेरी इस विजिट में एक नई ऊंचाई मिली है। कल जब मैंने कांग्रेस में इस बारे में बात की थी तो पूरे सदन में तालियों की गड़गड़ाहट रुकने का नाम नहीं ले रही थी। ये स्वागत हो रहा है। राष्ट्रपति बाइडेन की दीर्घदृष्टि, फोरसाइटनेस, पूरा सदन उछल उछल करके बधाई दे रहा था कल। भारत अमेरिका डिफेंस पार्टनरशिप अमेरिका के करीब करीब हर स्टेट के लोगों के साथ एक विशिष्ट प्रकार का नाता बना रहा है। एक मदद का नया एक आयाम खुल रहा है। एरिजोना में बनने वाले अपाचे हेलीकॉप्टर, जॉर्जिया के C-130 के सुपर हरकुलिस, अलाबामा के MH-60R हेलीकॉप्टर्स, वाशिंगटन और साउथ कैरोलिना के सिविलियन बोइंग एयरक्राफ्ट, पेंसिल्वेनिया के चिनूक हेलीकॉप्टर, ये भारत के साथ ही अमेरिका के डिफेंस और एरोस्पेस सेक्टर को भी मजबूती दे रहे हैं। टेक्सास, न्यू मैक्सिको, नॉर्थ डकोटा और अलास्का को भी भारत की तेजी से बढ़ती इकोनॉमी से मदद मिल रही है। टेक्सटाइल हो, फूड हो या फिर टूरिज्म, करीब करीब हर सेक्टर में भारत के एस्पिरेशंस अमेरिकी अर्थव्यवस्था को ताकत दे रही है। और मुझे एक बात की और खुशी है, भारत की कंपनियां भी अमेरिका में बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स का इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रही हैं। भारत की कंपनियां ग्लोबल बन रही हैं। न्यू जर्सी, टेक्सास, न्यूयॉर्क, कैलिफोर्निया, जॉर्जिया, इलिनॉय, मिशिगन, यहां बड़ी संख्या में भारतीय कंपनियां ऑपरेट कर रही हैं। उसमें से कुछ महानुभाव यहां मौजूद भी है। इन सब का फायदा कि यहां की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्री अमेरिका के युवाओं को हो रहा है, अमेरिका के किसानों को हो रहा है। साथियों, भारत और अमेरिका की ये पार्टनरशिप दोनों देशों के हित में है, दोनों देशों के लोगों के हित में भी है, और इसलिए इसको मजबूत करना भी उतना ही आवश्यक है। प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन के नेतृत्व में यहां की सरकार इस दिशा में बहुत बेहतर काम कर रही है। आप देख रहे हैं कि कैसे बीते 3 दिनों में इस पार्टनरशिप को मजबूती देने के लिए कई ऐतिहासिक कदम उठाए हैं। डिफेंस से लेकर एविएशन सेक्टर तक, अप्लाइड मटेरियल से लेकर के मैन्युफैक्चरिंग तक, आईटी सेक्टर से लेकर स्पेस सेक्टर तक, भारत अमेरिका अब मोस्ट रिलायबल पार्टनर की तरह आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। अब आप सभी साथियों को, बिजनेस कम्युनिटी को आगे बढ़कर इस अपॉर्चुनिटी का ज्यादा से ज्यादा लाभ उठाना है। साथियों, भारत के हर डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट में अमेरिकी ड्रीम को और मजबूती देने की क्षमता है। आप कल्पना कर सकते हैं, आज भारत इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर रिकॉर्ड $125 बिलियन से ज्यादा का इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहा है। भारत की इस ग्रोथ स्टोरी में अमेरिका के लिए, आप लोगों के लिए असीम संभावनाएं हैं। आपके लिए ये फर्स्ट एंड फास्ट मूवर एडवांटेज लेने का ये समय है। साथियों, बीते 3 दिनों में मेरी प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन से, यानी एक प्रकार से 3 दिन हमें साथ बिताने का अवसर मिला है। बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक मसलों पर बातचीत हुई है। इन मुलाकातों में भारत अमेरिका के भविष्य को लेकर ठोस बातें हुई हैं। हमने एक स्पष्ट रणनीति पर चलना तय किया है। आज व्हाइट हाउस में हुआ टेक्नोलॉजी हैंडशेक भी दोनों देशों की कंपनियों को, बिजनेस को, मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को, इनोवेटर्स को सीधा संदेश है, दिस इज द मोमेंट। दिस इज द मोमेंट। थैंक यू दोस्तों, थैंक यू। भारत अमेरिका की सरकारों ने आपके लिए ग्राउंड वर्क कर दिया है। खेत जोतने का काम हमने कर दिया है। इसमें जो जरूरी होगा वो हम आगे भी करते रहेंगे, लेकिन अब इस ग्राउंड पर खुलकर खेलने और खिलने की जिम्मेदारी आपकी है। और जो खेलेगा वो ही खिलेगा। मुझे विश्वास है आप कोई मौका नहीं छोड़ेंगे, इस अवसर का पूरा लाभ उठाएंगे। और मैं आपको इस बात का भरोसा देता हूं कि आपको भारत में एक बेहतर माहौल मिलेगा, बेहतर अवसर मिलेगा। ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस हमारी सरकार का कमिटमेंट है। साथियों, इतिहास साक्षी है कि जब जब भारत मजबूत हुआ है, तब तब पूरी दुनिया का लाभ हुआ है। 100 साल के सबसे बड़े संकट काल में, इस पैंडेमिक में भी हमने यही देखा है। जब दुनिया को दवाइयों की जरूरत थी, भारत ने अपना प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाकर 150 से ज्यादा देशों को दवाइयां भेजी। और वो समय याद कीजिए, घर से बाहर निकलने के लिए भी दुनिया डरती थी। तब दुनिया के 150 देशों को दवाइयां भेजी थी। जब दुनिया को कोरोना वैक्सीन की जरूरत थी, भारत ने अपना प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाकर 100 से ज्यादा देशों को वैक्सीन पहुंचाई थी। हमारा दिल बड़ा है। विश्व शांति के प्रति हमारा कमिटमेंट उससे भी बड़ा है। साथियों, अब इस बात के भी साक्षी हैं कि कोरोना वैश्विक महामारी ने ग्लोबल साइकोलॉजी को कितना नुकसान पहुंचाया है। हर कोई एक दूसरे पर शक कर रहा है। हर देश सोच रहा है कि मुझे जब जरूरत होगी तो कौन सा देश मेरा साथ देगा। यानी कोरोना ने शरीर के साथ ही मन पर भी गहरा आघात किया है। और हमें इस बात को कम नहीं आंकना चाहिए। शंका आशंका के इस दौर में भारत अपने हजारों वर्ष के डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज के साथ आगे बढ़ा है, दुनिया के साथ खड़ा है। साथियों, भारत के पास आने वाले समय की एक और चुनौती का सबसे बड़ा समाधान है। ये चुनौती है एजिंग की। हम इससे इनकार नहीं कर सकते कि एजिंग से सिर्फ मैन पावर ही प्रभावित नहीं होती, बल्कि ये कंजम्पशन, प्रोडक्शन और इनोवेशन को भी प्रभावित करती है। आज भारत दुनिया का सबसे युवा देश है। दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा युवा टैलेंट पूल भारत के पास है। दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी स्किल और प्रोफेशनल फोर्स भारत के पास है। इसलिए जो भी देश इस समय भारत से जुड़ेगा, उसका उतना ही फायदा होगा। साथियों, आप जानकर के खुशी होगी, भारत कितनी तेज गति से आगे बढ़ रहा है। स्पीड, स्केल। आज भारत में हर सप्ताह एक नई यूनिवर्सिटी बन रही है। आज भारत में हर तीसरे दिन एक अटल टिंकरिंग लैब खोली जा रही है। आज भारत में हर दो दिन में एक नए कॉलेज बन रहा है। आज भारत में हर दिन एक नई आईटीआई की स्थापना हो रही है। आज भारत में हर साल एक नया आईआईटी और एक नया आईआईएम बन रहा है। इन संस्थानों से निकला टैलेंट आज पूरी मानवता की भलाई के लिए काम कर रहा है। आज दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी कंपनियों में, फॉर्च्यून 500 कंपनियों में भारतीय हमें अहम भूमिका में नजर आते हैं। और इस हॉल में भी बहुत से ऐसे महानुभाव मौजूद हैं। मुझे विश्वास है भारत अमेरिकी साझा ड्रीम, भारत अमेरिकी साझा डिटर्मिनेशन 21वीं सदी में दुनिया की डेस्टिनी बदलने का सामर्थ्य रखता है। मैं आपको भारत की इस विकास यात्रा में एक साथ आगे बढ़ने के लिए फिर एक बार आमंत्रित करता हूं। लेट अस कम टुगेदर फॉर अ बेटर वर्ल्ड, बेटर फ्यूचर। लेट अस ग्रो विथ इंडिया। और मैंने एक बार लाल किले से कहा था मेरे भाषण में, और मैंने कहा था यही समय है, सही समय है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद साथियों।
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seat.
And that was the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who just addressed the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. He emphasized on people-to-people ties and asserted on how India would be going forward with ease of doing business in the country. He also asserted on how India has a very big heart. He further said that India and US government have done their bit and they will continue to create a better and business-friendly environment. While US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States of America was a historic visit. And he also laid a lot of emphasis on the education sector and the people-to-people ties between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. For more on this, we have with us our correspondent Molly Gambhir, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Hi Molly. Now the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken outlined a slew of deals that were signed. It does look like New Delhi and Washington have pledged cooperation on areas including space, AI, quantum computing and also the defense sector.
Right, and just like the American president put it earlier, the number of agreements, deals and the areas where the two sides have convergence of interest is showing how comprehensive this relationship really has become and how it has evolved over the past decade. Look at how trade has substantially gone up, in fact doubling over the past decade. Look at the way the two sides are strengthening their defense cooperation, and which is going to propel the strategic partnership between the two countries as well. But people-to-people ties being a very crucial aspect of the Indian Prime Minister's visit here to the United States as well. And the larger message that has gone out from both the Indian and the American side is that this partnership is going to be defining the 21st century. Those were the words also used by the US President Joe Biden earlier. The Indian Prime Minister also laying emphasis on how the potential that the two sides have for increasing their cooperation in the tech space has no limits. And the US President also talking about how tech cooperation is a big part of the Indian Prime Minister's visit here. Just look at the ways in which the two sides have come together, be it ISET, be it the deal to jointly manufacture jet engines, which would put India in that exclusive club of countries to be able to master jet engine technology. Beyond that, we have the two sides cooperating as far as lifting of barriers is concerned as well. The Indian Prime Minister meeting business leaders and delegates and addressing them here at the Kennedy Center as well. We've seen some very crucial statements being made by the Indian Prime Minister, recognizing the potential that business-to-business ties really have between India and the United States, and how it is important to look at this as a way to also push the partnership forward. We will now have the Indian Prime Minister in just a short while addressing members of the Indian diaspora who have been very excited to listen in from the leader. We've seen the Indian American community, both in New York and Washington, D.C., also leaving no stone unturned to welcome the leader. We've been talking to a number of them, in fact, who have talked about how they have been looking forward to listening into the Prime Minister, to be able to catch a glimpse of him, and for them just how historic this moment really is. Historic it is, after all. It is the Prime Minister's maiden state visit to the United States. The very fact that this is not the very fact that this is a state visit sets it apart from the earlier visits, because this is the highest ranking diplomatic visit. It's the highest expression of friendly bilateral ties, and the two sides have made it clear that they are going to be pushing forward also in the area of ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific, because America does realize the potential that India has when it comes to helping the U.S. counter China, also diversifying supply chains and weaning them off from China. That's something that America has on its wish list, and India can be a reliable partner on that front as well.
Right, Molly. Prime Minister Modi also asserted on how the relations between New Delhi and Washington is not of convenience, but rather of conviction. We also have with us our correspondent Susan Tharani joining us live from New York. Hi, Susan. We just heard Blinken and Modi address the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum. There was a lot of emphasis on people-to-people ties and also on the robust partnership between New Delhi and the United States of America. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like the two sides are more on the same page than ever before, although there are just some minor issues, and those are regarding rules and regulations here in the United States, at least when it comes to the defense partnership and the sharing of technology that needs to be ironed out. But other than that, really, since the Clinton administration, and then really we saw during the Bush administration, U.S. presidents have really made an effort to try to bring India closer to the West and closer to the United States. And I think we see the culmination of that happening right now with President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, because it's in the strategic interest of both countries at this point. They have more similarities and more concerns in common than differences. And I think we see that really in speeches not only by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, of course, President Biden as well, but also business leaders here in the United States that are watching very carefully how this relationship develops, what the rules and regulations here are in the United States and in India as well. Remember, regarding trade, India has agreed to lift some tariffs on U.S. goods, considering the fact that the United States is India's biggest trading partner. And so they're watching very closely the Chamber of Commerce and whatnot to see how this relationship develops and how far the field is and how far they can go in building economic and trade ties. So, yes, the people-to-people is very important culturally and in the society, with Indian Americans really contributing here in the United States. But then you really have those big companies, business leaders that are looking to diversify their businesses and their companies. And of course, the supply chain issue that we had and we witnessed during COVID, for that to never happen again. So it's very noteworthy. I'd like to see what comes out of statements we hear about the meeting with, big executives. We did hear about Elon Musk, but then the other executives that talked to Prime Minister Modi, it'll be interesting to see how far their conversations went as well.
Absolutely, Susan. Also, Molly, talk to us about how the Indian Prime Minister said that India is going through an unprecedented reforming period. He further urged various American companies to invest in India.
Well, the meetings with the business leaders here in Washington, D.C., also in New York, being one of the most important aspects of the Indian Prime Minister's visit here, given the emphasis that he has been laying on the Make in India initiative. After all, America and American businesses do view India as a lucrative destination, given the growing clout that it has. Also, given that it is a crucial market to watch out for. The meetings with the American CEOs and the delegates, and also the address to them by the Indian Prime Minister, sending out a message that India is positioning itself on the global map and is ready for those investments. But also, the fact that we have such a huge participation of these American business delegates and CEOs, a lot of optics on that front as well, and the symbolism that comes with that, because it does send out a strong message on part of India and the United States as well, of them coming together to forge closer business-to-business ties, which has been a key focus area in the run-up to the Indian Prime Minister's visit as well. We've seen those statements coming in from the American officials, talking about how this is going to be a springboard to touch new horizons on that front. Also how they are going to be setting new benchmarks in defense industrial cooperation. But business-to-business ties being one of the elements that has been talked about at length, also in the conversations that we've been having with the foreign policy analysts here in Washington, D.C. and also earlier in New York, who have talked about how it's a very interesting time for the India-US relationship, given the scope that businesses in both the countries really have to build a bridge and work closer together.
Right, Molly. We also have with us our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal. Siddhant, what were some of the key outcomes of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech, his latest speech that he just delivered?
Well, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his latest address, while addressing the Honorable News, talked about India and India-US relationship, where the partnership is going forward. But remember, this relationship is based on the Indian diaspora, the members of the Indian diaspora, and the next and the last event of the Indian Prime Minister will be the address to the diaspora. I'm surrounded by members of the Indian diaspora here at the Ronald Center. Sir, welcome to WION. I would like to speak to you. If you can come closer to me, how do you see the Prime Minister's visit to the United States?
It is a very important visit. This is going to bring more stronger relationships between India and U.S. In terms of technology, AI, and defense. So this is a very good visit, and we were here at the White House yesterday, and it was an amazing. It's an amazing partnership.
Amazing partnership is the world. We saw at the White House, at the South Lawn, large number of members of the Indian American diaspora. Sir, your view about the diaspora event, what do you expect from the Prime Minister's event?
The contributions that the Indian diaspora towards the growth of India, and how the two biggest democracies in the world can come together and do good for the world, and how to take it forward for the next decades is something very important that's going to be coming out of the partnership. Many deals are going to be inked, but more important is how these two democracies
take the region and the world and the most India's place at the world. I would like to have some of the ladies at the come here. How do you see India and Prime
and we have a very specific our generation, what he's doing for the next generation. Our kids are learning a lot from him. So we all support him. Like whatever he says, does it and he shows.
Does it and shows it. Last word to you, man, if you can come from the here and talk about the members of the Indian diaspora. Your side here. You're wearing the sari. If you go around Washington, you don't see that. How are you spending you can come closer and speak to us? Ma'am, come closer. Okay. So a lot of Gujaratis are also present here, but essentially the message is clear. Happy faces, and all these happy faces need to welcome the Indian Prime Minister shortly. He is going to arrive here and is going to address the diaspora.
Right, Siddhant, that's quite a lot of excitement out there. We are also waiting for Prime Minister Modi's visit, attending the Indian diaspora event out there. I would now come to our correspondent Susan Tharani. Susan, how do you assess the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, encouraging more American firms to invest in India as it looks to reduce its reliance on China for manufacturing-related activities?
Yeah, that's a very important aspect of this visit for the United States and for India as well, considering the fact that there are so many avenues that India and the United States can cooperate on at this point. And also the issue of, for example, semiconductors, or if it's the issue of solar power systems. You know, a lot of these products are coming from China to the United States. And that's something that has made Americans very weary. American companies have often been criticized for doing business in China, but they haven't had another outlet to expand and diversify. And, you know, as Molly and Siddhant have mentioned, this is a very unique opportunity right now that both countries have, that they're open to perhaps reaching a compromise when it comes to trade, because each country, as you know, ultimately has its own rules and regulations. And that has been, in part, largely one of the main reasons that this expansion hasn't happened sooner. But it seems like when there is a will, there is a way, as they say, and now is that time. American companies are looking to expand in India, many because the talent and the know-how of the technology that they're looking for is in India. As Prime Minister Modi noted, that while it's an ancient country, it has a very youthful population. And so the youth in India is very important, not only for Americans, American businesses, but also for that sort of, you know, people-to-people relations that we've talked about. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that happening. So it's not just the visa issue that, for example, they've talked about. It's also diversifying the workforce and the supply chain as well. And I think that's where India really comes in for these companies.
Absolutely, Susan. Coming to you, Molly. Now, just a short while ago, U.S. President Joe Biden gifted a T-shirt to Modi with a quote which says, "Future is AI," which on one hand also means artificial intelligence, but also means that future is America and India. Talk to us more on that as New Delhi and Washington take their friendships to a greater height with Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to Washington, D.C.
Right. Just look at the way the India-US relationship really has evolved, and the opportunities and the challenges that have come along this journey, and the milestones that have been achieved, and the many that lie ahead. And it's always been a smooth sailing relationship, of course. There have been friction points, and there will be friction points. And that's something that even the foreign policy analysts we've been speaking to point out, that India and the US have realized that they are trusted, reliable partners for each other. At the same
Right, there's some technical glitch out there. I would now go across to our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, who's joining us live from the venue where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be arriving. Siddhant, talk to us about what is the mood like on the ground. You're right there. Talk to us about how the Indian community there are excited for the Indian Prime Minister's arrival.
Well, they're super excited. We just spoke to many of them, and they clearly want to meet Prime Minister Modi. They want to greet him. They want to warmly welcome him. There are almost 4 million members of the Indian American diaspora, and they play an important role in terms of the communities, in terms of the policymakers as well. Now, if we talk about the administration, the Biden administration, it has a number of Indian Americans. In fact, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, is an Indian American. She is someone who has a family, has strong linkages with India, something that she talks about. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister, during his address at the U.S. Capitol building at the U.S. Congress, talked about her and how the Indian diaspora has been playing an important role in strengthening the relationship. Now, we know that all through the visit, there have been hard diplomacy in terms of defense, in terms of critical technologies, in terms of how both countries see each other in long-term as a long-term partners. But a substantive portion of this was celebration of the relationship through the Indian-American diaspora. We were at the South Lawns of the White House, and this is something that I've never seen there at the White House. The entire area, entire White House reverberating with the chants of the Indian-American diaspora. Then, of course, we saw the Capitol building as well, while the Indian Prime Minister came to address the U.S. Congress. The Capitol building was reverberating with the Indian Americans, and now, of course, the last event of the Indian Prime Minister's visit to U.S., a very, very packed visit, a very long visit, but a visit full of outcomes. This visit will be seen as a milestone in terms of India-U.S. relationship, how essentially this was a visible manifestation of how the American policymakers see the Indian side, the Indian Prime Minister. They were comments we all know, especially by the former U.S. President Barack Obama, but it looks like reality only strikes policymakers when they are in the hot seat, when they are ruling the country, and that shows that how they see India as a country that is important for the global stability and a country whose rise is a peaceful rise, unlike, of course, India's neighbor, that's China.
Right, Siddhant, also talk to us about how defense sector has been one of the dominating topics in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Washington, D.C.
Well, defense, essentially, I would put it like this, that it was the showstopper focus area during the visit of the Indian Prime Minister, which is still underway. We saw announcements ranging from drones to basically the manufacturing of jet engines, Indian personnel, liaison officers in U.S. Assets, which is another significant step forward. Both countries are working towards other foundational agreements, essentially, and how both countries are keen on co-production. Now, co-production has become a buzzword during the visit. We know that India is keen on more local manufacturing in India, Make in India. Make in India defense has been a priority. Yes, it has its own shortcomings, but the Indian government is leaving no stone unturned in terms of bringing investments in the country from across the world. And we saw that as well. The Indian Prime Minister meeting various investors. Earlier today, he met Google's, in fact, Alphabet's Sundar Pichai and other top CEOs as well. So the focus is to roll out the red carpet, whether it's general investment or investment for the defense sector.
Right, Siddhant. I would also now go across to our correspondent Susan Therani. Susan, talk to us about some of the key takeaways of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit and how this would impact the changing world order.
I think one issue that we haven't touched upon was the issue of climate change and the environment that both leaders talked about during that press conference. On the one hand, President Biden and his administration has been very keen on clean energy and tackling climate change. And Prime Minister Modi talked about how India was the only country under the Paris Agreement that abided by its commitment ultimately, and it's moving forward to cleaner energy sources. And I think there was an agreement between the two sides, India and the United States, for more electric vehicles and electric buses in the near future to operate inside India. So I think that was sort of an interesting nugget of discussion that we haven't really touched upon much. And then the issue of healthcare, this vaccine diplomacy really took center stage during COVID, obviously. And India was at the forefront of really helping other countries on the one hand with the COVID vaccine, but also trying to contain it inside India on the other when the situation was very bad. And I think on the issue of healthcare, the two sides also tried to reach some kind of agreement and work in lockstep if